The opinions expressed on Teachavision are solely those of the guests and hosts and do not represent other companies or third parties. Thank you for listening.
Hello, and welcome to Teachavision, a podcast by Screenless Allies, where everyone has a different vision of learning. And now, here's your host, Jose Briceño.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Teachavision. Thank you for joining us. It's great to be back, as I said on the last episode, which, by the way, thank you to everyone who was listening to that episode of the Roundtable with my friends live from Orlando, Florida. Please keep sharing the podcast with your friends. Let them know that we're back. No more hiatuses for a while. We got some stuff down the pipeline for you guys coming up pretty soon. We really hope that you'll stick around with us as we continue with the journey of Teachavision. Today, we're going to bring to the podcast an interview that I recorded last year, but due to some unforeseen circumstances, we were not able to air it. But we have it here right now. We're going to talk to Sarai Hernandez, who is a teacher and also plays sports. How do we do that? How does this even happen? Well, you're gonna have to stay tuned and find out. On this first part, we're just going to learn the basics, how her childhood was, what were the struggles, all this, and riding bikes right here on this episode of Teachavision by Screenless Allies. Sarai, thank you very much for joining me today. Welcome to Teachavision.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Tell me, we'll start off this interview by just kind of asking you some get-to-know-you questions. Tell us a little bit about yourself, just in general. What are your hobbies? Any favorite foods? Do you like to read? Things like that?
I love all kinds of stuff. So I love adaptive sports. So I play beat baseball. I also play some goal ball. I would really like to learn how to play blind soccer, like looking into doing that soon. And I also, as far as like hobbies, I love books. I love like different shows. I'm in a few book clubs right now. Some of them are virtual and one of them is in person. So we just started that up, so it's really exciting. And TV shows. And I used to not really like cooking that much, but I've actually grown to enjoy it a lot more. So I would say that cooking is kind of becoming a hobby. And other than that, that's pretty much it, I think.
Do you sing? Do you dance? Anything like that?
No, only in the shower when nobody's hearing me. Although it's funny because recently I went to a friend's birthday party and they had karaoke and I was just like singing. And everybody was singing, right? So I was singing and all of a sudden they put the mic in my face. And so everybody heard me sing and they couldn't get over how I knew all the words of all the rap parts. And they were just like, what? We didn't know you had it in you. So they're like, nah, now you have to karaoke for real, like on the big stage. So...
Wow. And it was rap. Let me just put that out there. It was rap. It wasn't actually.
Okay, you know what song it was? It was that song, Yeah, by Usher, that really old song.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can imagine me, just the whole thing. It was hilarious. It was pretty funny.
Nice. Yes, I remember that song from back in the day.
Yeah, way back in the day.
Let's see. 2008, 2009, right? Around that time?
Let's see.
2000.
Yeah, I think I was like in 3rd grade or 5th grade. I was in elementary.
Yeah,
You're probably younger than that.
Yeah, I was probably in 2nd grade.
Yeah.
2nd grade, 3rd grade. Oh yeah, I remember that. That song was played they played the censored version, obviously, in elementary school.
Yeah.
But, well, no, you know what? They didn't even play that in elementary school. They played Head, Shoulders, Knees, and Toes every day. That's what they played. The rap version, the remix version, All right, you told us what you like to do. You like to read books. You like to do all that fun stuff, cooking. Tell me about your eye condition. Are you totally blind? Are you visually impaired? Were you born blind? And if so, how did that happen if you were?
So I believe I was born fully sighted, but when babies are born, they don't see right away like an adult, so their vision develops, little by little. For me, what happened was someone not in my family, but a friend of my family kind of started noticing that I didn't react. She felt like something was off with my eyes. And your family, they see you every day, so sometimes they don't quite catch small changes, or they just think like it's a baby, like she's just growing up. And so they kind of kept mentioning it to my mom. And eventually my sister, I have an older sister, she's 10 years older than me. And so I guess she overheard and kind of started playing with me, testing me, not in a mean way, just kind of like, oh, I wonder what she's talking about, right? And just kind of seeing if she agreed. And my older sister actually told my mom, I think she's right. I think something's wrong. And so around that time, they took me to several doctors and, everything was okay. But then they started noticing that I started crying a lot. I had already begun to walk and I started walking, and all of a sudden, I was successful with walking. I'd done it for a while, and all of a sudden, I would just kind of lose my balance and just fall, and they would start to notice a lot of weird things. And my mom would say that I would cry a lot, and she just felt like something was wrong. And again, she would take me to different doctors, and they just were like, baby face, like she's gonna grow out of it. And eventually she took me to an ENT, so that's like the ear, nose, and throat doctor. And so when he did some tests, he realized that the reflexes in my eyes weren't, I don't remember exactly what test it was. I don't even think it was my eyes, to be honest, but it was something that led him to think that it might be my vision. And so from there, they referred me to an eye doctor. And by the time they referred me and everything, they realized that I had tumors in my eyes. So I had tumors developing in my retinas. And my mom went from hearing, hey, your daughter has nothing wrong with her, to, hey, your daughter has cancer. And so it was a big difference, right? So she was like, I don't know that I believe this, because they basically told her, hey, if she doesn't have surgery, your daughter's going to die. She will go blind, but if she doesn't have surgery, she's gonna die. And so that was a big news for my family to take in. Like I said before, they were told like nothing's wrong with her, and then from being told that to your daughter's gonna die or she's gonna go blind, like it's pretty drastic of a change. And so she's like, you know what, I want to get a second opinion. So she did take me to another doctor, and from there they also told her the same thing. And I think she might have done one more. And then by then she was like, okay, it's true, and had kind of accepted it. So crazy story. I don't remember the specifics, but what I do know is that they were going to have my surgery. They had scheduled the date and everything. And at that time in 1994, there was a hurricane called Hurricane Alicia, and there was a big old flood in Houston. And a lot of the electricity went out. There was a lot of issues, so they had to postpone it again. And so you're waiting more and more time. By the time they did do my surgery, they told my family she has about 20% chance of surviving the surgery and about 80% chance that she'll pass away if it works, regardless. And we're not certain that the surgery will work because the tumors have grown very quickly. By that time, like I said, it started like in my retinas, grew to my corneas, and was kind of almost reaching my brain. So pretty quickly, things happen very fast. But luckily, I had my surgery, and so during my surgery, they removed most of my eyes, and with that, I did end up completely blind. And I was really lucky that at that time, my doctors were really awesome. They're amazing. The doctor told my mom, you know what? She is going to have a different life, but she's going to be a successful person. She can do a lot of things. I know that it might look different from what you thought her life was going to be, but she will be okay. And he took her to see this woman that was working for him. And he had hired a blind lady, and she was on the computer. And she said, look, your daughter will be a professional one day. And just like her, you see her on the computer, she has a job. And for my mom, at that point, I don't know that she fully believed it, but it was really helpful for her to see a blind person working, a blind person using the computer, a blind person living their life. And so she tells me to this day, like, that was really helpful. It was really good to see, because it's one thing for them to tell you something, but it's another thing for you to see it with your own eyes and see proof, that what they're saying is true.
Right. Definitely.
And I had that doctor for more than 20 years. He just actually retired last year. And I'm very thankful for him, because, like I said, things could have ended up very differently, and I could have not survived my surgery. And I'm really thankful that they took the time to try. And
so he got to see you grow.
Yeah,
and
he did.
learn.
He got to see me be a little kid, and he got to see me grow up into a young adult. He got to see me graduate college, and got to see me, in my profession. And so this was really cool. And like I said, I'm really thankful that he gave that advice to my mom and said, like, you're going to treat her like, you're not going to say, let her feel this. You're going to say, let me see. If she says, let me see, that's her way of seeing. And you're not going to make it weird by saying, you're not seeing that. He gave them a lot of really, I think, helpful advice. And like I said, I'm really thankful that he introduced her to that blind woman. And I'm not sure if they actually met, but I do know that my mom saw her working.
This is a different story. This is a way different story than most people that are totally blind, because it's like, especially for us who, full disclosure, we're Hispanics. So that being said, compared to like your story, for example, when I was born, it was a whole different, it's like, oh, well, what am I going to do now? And I don't know what we're going to do now that he doesn't have any vision, because I was born blind myself. And so it was like, oh, what am I going to do with my vision? It was definitely difficult for my parents. And of course, that in our culture, it's a little, blind people and people with disabilities in general are, kind of gazed down upon and,
Yeah, I think it's that we're sheltered, and it comes from a place of love and caring and wanting to protect, but sometimes it can become the thing that holds you back because they don't let you try things on your own. They kind of shelter you, and life isn't that way. There are times when your family's not going to be there. If you want to blossom and grow, then you're gonna be without them and you're gonna try things on your own. You're gonna need to do things for yourself. And so I'm just thankful that, like I said, that doctor really pushed for my family to treat me the same. And yes, it was really hard on my mom and dad. I mean, at that same time, my sister was going through a lot of seizures. She had epilepsy. And so one daughter was constantly in the hospital for epilepsy, and the other one was dying of cancer. So it really was hard on them. And I remember my mom telling me, I told them, take my eyes, give her my eyes, because I've already seen the world. She hasn't seen the world. And they had explained to her, like, that's not the way it works. And she felt really powerless, felt a lot of grief, a lot of sadness, a lot of fear, but she got a lot of support from people in the community. I'm not really sure how people found out, but she told me that a lot of people showed up with like baby wipes and diapers and like food for my family when they were going through all of that. And so we're really fortunate that a lot of people helped in many different ways. Like I said, people from the church, the doctors were really helpful. And eventually I got a teacher of the visually impaired, a VI teacher who worked with me to teach me basically how to be blind, because I went from being a baby that could see, maybe not 100% like a typical toddler because I did have tumors, but I could still see a lot. And going from that to not being able to recognize objects by just touching them. Like I had to learn all of that. And on top of that, I only knew Spanish and had to also learn how to speak English. It was a lot of changes, a lot of learning, a lot of adjusting, but I'm very thankful for all the people that helped in that journey.
That's a good story for sure. I want more stories like this. Yes, in general. But that's good, though. You answered some of the other question, which was, how was your upbringing? It sounds to me like, your parents definitely adapted a lot. Did they play with you a lot? Were they always hands-on with you at the time?
Again, I have a sister that's 10 years older. I have a brother that's older than her. And so I had an older brother, and for a while, until I was like 8, I had my first younger sibling. My baby brother was born, and then 2 years after that my sister was born. But I played a lot. I ran outside. My dad and my brother got me, those little battery operated cars that you ride in, and I would drive them around.
The little Jeeps, right?
Yeah, the little Jeeps. I had a pink one, and then I had a purple motorcycle. So
oh my God,
yeah, they were awesome.
The good old days.
I loved them. Back then we lived in a place where there was like a lot of woods around, but then there was also like country roads, and so I would ride my bike around. And I love that my parents let me ride my bike. I started with a little tricycle.
Of course.
And then eventually came to the little bike with training wheels. And it's funny because, well, my friend borrowed my bike, and she was a lot heavier than me. And she popped off my training wheels, and so I was kind of forced to learn how to ride my bike with 2 wheels. But we did it. I did it, and taught myself, and then rode around everywhere. And when I really wanted to go super fast, because I would ride it kind of fast, but not crazy fast, because like I knew that there was stuff around. There's trees, like I said, woods and stuff. And so it was weird. Like, I mean, yeah, I would run into stuff occasionally, but for the most part, I was really good with my orientation, so I knew where I was at and stuff. But when my dad would take me to the park and he would let me ride my bike, and he would actually give me, back then, those walkie-talkies, those little headsets.
Oh yeah, the little tiny,
so,
the toy ones, right?
Yeah.
Just that kind of covered like about a few yards, right? You turn it up and it went.
I don't know where he got these. These were fancy. I remember he got them from Radio Shack. If you remember Radio Shack.
Oh, of course I remember Radio Shack.
Yeah.
You're making me feel old over here.
No, I know. But, well, I mean, this was a long time ago. This was like 20 years ago. So...
All right, a long time ago, back when we had Radio Shack. No, but
we,
yeah. No.
We did. And he would tell me, like, left, right. And I would go crazy in the park. And every once in a while, my dad would, like, to kind of, I guess, even the playing field a little bit, he would blindfold my cousins and then be like, all right, let's race. Like, you guys run from here to there, and, so, or like, let's do this and that. And so, I mean, I definitely grew up with my cousins playing around, and I grew up climbing trees and, just being a kid, and I'm really thankful for my family for not keeping me so sheltered where I wasn't able to run and play, and experience all those things. Because obviously, yes, I would bump myself or fall. I remember one time I was running and my brother was chasing me. I knew to stay in the middle of the trail, and we're in Mexico. And I remember vividly, like, I slipped off the little middle part of the trail and I fell into these thorns, like where the cactus were, near where the cactus. So I had to take them all out, but that happens. This doesn't just happen to blind kids. That happens to kids in general.
Oh,
They
yeah.
play, they get hurt.
Yeah.
But I have those stories and I have those memories. And yeah, it hurt at the time, but it's just funny to me now. So, and I'm thankful, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like whenever we were... I remember when I was a kid, you were talking about that. My dad would do the same thing. We would go out and I would go run or whatever and I would fall. And he'd be like, levántese, levántese.
Yeah.
And I'm like, levántese. Get up, y'all English speakers. It means get up. Come on, get up.
Yeah.
I know where she's coming from. Oh, I hate using this word, but you were raised in a normal environment. I hate that word, but
Yeah.
just as a comparison to other blind people.
Yeah, I would say a lot of things they did let me do on my own, but there were some things that I did get kind of sheltered from. My mom, I remember being really little, like maybe 7 years old, couldn't even reach the sink, and she would put a big old chair for me to sit on so I could reach the sink and help her wash the dishes. But at the same time, when I became a teenager and wanted to learn how to cook, she was just, I'm sorry, I'm just so scared. I can't teach you that. Like, I'm so scared. I don't know.
My family too.
Yeah, that was one thing, right, where they kind of held back was in the kitchen and preparing food and cooking food. Another thing I would say that they kind of sheltered me from was like O&M. Yes, I was allowed to roam around and everything and do all of that, like in my home and in different places, but I wasn't really allowed to, let's say, walk to the convenience store alone, So there were some areas where I think my family, they just didn't know what blind people could do, I think, but also they didn't really know how to teach me some things or how to let go. So I think that every parent goes through that. And sometimes they're better in some areas of letting go than others. So I did definitely still have some things that they sheltered me from, for sure.
Definitely. And by the way, O&M stands for Orientation and Mobility for the first time listeners. And it basically teaches you how to basically walk around as a blind person with just a cane. Yeah, you definitely had a pretty good upbringing, which is great. I can relate in a lot of those factors. I feel like I'm talking to a girl version of myself right about now.
And we're around the same age, so it would make sense.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Teachavision. If you enjoyed the episode, make sure to check out previous shows, which are equally informative and fun as this one. Make sure to also check out our website at screenlessallies.com. Like us on Facebook, facebook.com/ScreenlessAlliesOfficial. Do you have any suggestions or comments? Why not email us, info@screenlessallies.com. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.